Hello, this is Chronosight's weekly astrology with Real Star. Let's begin the forecast for early February from February 1st to the 14th, 2026. Since there were so many dramatic celestial alignments in January, February might seem like a quiet month, but that is actually not true at all. In late February, we have a rare annular solar eclipse returning once again after a long period of 1 year and 4 months. Solar and lunar eclipses include total, annular, and partial varieties. But partial eclipses are essentially similar to a strong new moon phase, so we don't really count them as significant eclipse events. So we usually focus our attention on total and annular solar eclipses. Anyway, a proper eclipse is happening for the very first time in 16 months, and it is happening on February 17th, which is in late February. Also, the rare conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, which occurs every 36 years, will take place on February 20th. These massive heavyweight alignments are scheduled for late February. Since early February doesn't have anything that significant, it's like the calm before the storm. In January, most of the major alignments were concentrated in the early part of the month. So the month between early January and late February isn't exactly quiet, but you can think of it as a period of preparation. Now, the first alignment we'll look at is Mercury is moving and will meet the fixed stars Sadalsuud-Deneb Algedi on February 3rd. This alignment will be active specifically on February 3rd. Sadalsuud and Deneb Algedi are not considered to be first magnitude stars, rather they are classified as second magnitude. Calling them minor stars is a bit much, but they are second magnitude. In terms of their celestial longitude, they are only approximately 10 or 11 arc-minutes apart. So if a planet meets Sadalsuud, it will inevitably meet Deneb Algedi at the same time. So you can effectively conceptualize them as being a pair of celestial stars that are perpetually bound to travel together. When Mercury meets both of them, this alignment can frequently trigger sudden, uncharacteristic whims, leading you to abruptly pivot toward a completely different direction than you had originally intended. You end up making that choice. By deciding on something different from what was originally planned, you might end up facing some significant losses. Yeah, usually following a whim like this and thinking it was a good idea, or that it was the better choice, doesn't happen very often, statistically speaking. Usually decisions you've already made are based on long reflection or advice from others, so they're more likely to be the right ones. So if you act on a whim this time, there's a high chance you'll end up regretting it, thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done that. On the other hand, your reputation among those around you isn't great. A poor reputation, not very diligent, not that faithful in relationships, someone who lives as they please but has great ability. You might hear this kind of reputation. Your ability is recognized, but your reputation is poor. It might seem like a bit of a paradoxical contradiction, but it is actually something that can indeed occur in reality. Because you're perceived that way by others, you might wonder, is it okay to live like this? You might experience a situation where you start to feel a bit uneasy or uncomfortable. And 2 days later, Venus follows exactly the same path that Mercury took. Why? Was it January 29th or 30th? It's the 29th. On the 29th, Mercury and Venus form a conjunction, but since both are in direct motion, Mercury is faster than Venus. So as they reach conjunction and begin to cross paths, Mercury moves ahead and overtakes Venus, which means that Venus will meet the same fixed stars and planets that Mercury met a few days later in their orbits. So this is a structure that's valid on February 5th. When Venus meets Sadalsuud and Deneb Algedi, there's a sign of being physically or spatially separated from someone close. So if you are currently dating, it could be a long-distance relationship, or for couples like weekend or long-distance spouses who only meet occasionally and are physically apart from each other. It might not happen to you directly, but you might see it happening to those around you, or you might find yourself forced to be long distance due to a job transfer or a work dispatch. Such things could certainly happen at any time, making you worry and feel concerned about exactly how you should effectively handle and navigate the situation. And on the other hand, there are private tastes or inner impulses I don't want to show others. So everyone probably has a particular guilty pleasure, like enjoying this, being deeply engrossed in that, or looking this information up. Something you'd show a friend but never ever show your family. Or looking at it from the opposite perspective, it might be something you would show your family, but definitely not to your colleagues. Such private things could be unintentionally disclosed to other people through some unexpected incident or simple carelessness. So if you want to prevent that sense of shame, you must live your life strictly, carefully, and meticulously. And then, 4 days later, after moving past Aquarius, Mercury enters the sign of Pisces and meets the star Fomalhaut at 4 degrees of Pisces. Fomalhaut is quite an important star, but is not very welcomed in the primary direction method because it's quite far from the ecliptic. Stars like Aldebaran, Regulus, and Antares are also first magnitude stars, but are treated as royal stars because they're near the ecliptic. Fomalhaut is a symbolic star for the north in classics, but it's far from the ecliptic in latitude. It's a bit difficult for it to become a royal star. Anyway, Fomalhaut and Mercury meet on February 9th, and it's a structure that operates on that very day. At this time, it's best to postpone any decisions involving large sums of money. Signing contracts, making decisions, or spending big money, these shouldn't happen on this day. If they do, there's a very high probability it'll lead to losses or regrets later on. Since Fomalhaut acts as a very malefic star regarding finances or success, it has a different purpose. It's bound to fail in matters involving clear numbers. That's not how you're supposed to use Fomalhaut. So if you must make a major financial decision, try your best to avoid February 9th. Instead, it might be far more advantageous to keep your speech intentionally vague, mysterious, and highly ambiguous, rather than making a clear, definitive decision and showing it publicly. Keeping others in a state of constant uncertainty and confusion could actually work significantly in your favor. That is exactly the case in this situation. Fomalhaut is a star that requires a bit of uncertainty, and showing ambiguity is what leads to success with this star. And 2 days later, as Saturn moves, this is the second or third time already, right? Is it the beta star of Pegasus? Let me check. Yes, anyway, the beta star, it should be Pegasus. Stars in Pegasus, such as Algedi or Scheat, are all regarded as malefic. Markup. Anyway, Saturn meets Scheat again, which is purely malefic. Why? It's because Saturn is currently repeating its retrograde motion in this area. They meet on February 11th, and it's active from February 5th to the 16th. Nothing good comes from Saturn meeting Scheat, which is already malefic. Vulnerable groups of people like the elderly or children and people with weakened immune systems. There is a specific type B flu virus circulating widely these days. Anyway, being unexpectedly exposed to infectious diseases, bitterly cold weather, or extreme weather could cause significantly more physical suffering than one might typically expect. In mundane terms, a sudden cold wave or a severe epidemic could break out and cause widespread harm to many people. Also, Saturn symbolizes the elderly, and Scheat signifies what we call domestic trouble, meaning various unfortunate events or problems within the family. So, when these two meet, it involves the health of family elders who will provide care and where and how to handle assets later. You get the vibe, right? Even closely bonded siblings can easily have disagreements and falling outs when discussing these kinds of things. Discussing the health or death of one's own parents is such a heavy and difficult topic to navigate. But ironically, when someone passes away, inheritance follows, right? That's just how the world works. So there are complex and difficult situations that can very easily damage and strain relationships. I mean, sensitive issues and decisions regarding an elder in the family, like how to properly care for them or how to handle their eventual passing, can easily lead to significant disagreements and conflicts among family members. Please keep that important point in mind. Now, on February 12th, Mercury will form a significant conjunction with Rahu, the North Node, so this alignment will be particularly active from February 10th all the way to the 14th. During this period, innovative technologies or groundbreaking new concepts that could change the landscape of our future daily lives may suddenly become widely recognized. For instance, a discovery from a prestigious university lab or a published paper might get picked up by the media. It'll spread, making people wonder, wow, is this really possible? Can it actually happen? But looking at how things are going lately, it feels like anything is possible. So, while such news might break, the problem is it's likely to be the kind of news that gets people looking for a jackpot, all fired up and ecstatic. So if you happen to hear this piece of news and suddenly feel like reevaluating and changing your existing decisions or plans, then everyone, don't just look at the mainstream media. Don't stop at newspapers or informative YouTube videos. You must take the time to verify if it's actually true, and if there's a realistic basis by looking up scientific research papers and such. Well, these days you can ask AI systems for help, but if you only ask them one single time, you won't get a consistently accurate result. You really have to press it and ask 3 or 4 times to, what do you call it, get to the heart of the matter, you know? You have to maintain a very careful watch over its output. Everyone, as of January 2026, artificial intelligence systems still significantly lack proper self-censorship, so the occurrence of hallucinations remains a remarkably frequent issue. Therefore, to use it properly, you must keep it in check. You need to cross-verify at least 3 or 4 times. Use ChatGPT, then Gemini, then Claude, and see if they all agree. Check if their arguments aren't just coming from a single source. One isn't enough. Multiple sources should say the same thing. You have to be thorough like that to get a proper result. So don't think you've done a real fact check just by asking an AI once or twice. Now, in 2 days, as Saturn moves, it finally shifts from Pisces into Aries, and Saturn's orbital period is 29.5 years. Until one cycle passes, even if Saturn goes retrograde next time, it won't be returning to Pisces. From now on, it'll keep moving through Aries, then to Taurus, and then to Gemini. In a way, February 13th was the last period that Saturn was in Pisces during this cycle. So this structure of Saturn re-entering Aries is active from February 7th to the 21st. Now, because the situation is so uncertain, you keep putting off a decision, but then you finally make a choice. But I have to do it now. I have to decide now. That kind of impatient and hasty feeling blinds you, so your judgment gets a bit clouded in terms of your decision making. So you might end up making the wrong choice. Any choice you make while feeling rushed like this should be questioned 2 or 3 times. And another thing, you need some metacognition about why you're acting this way, but there's this long-standing competitive streak towards someone. Thinking about a person or a group, this could be like being a soccer fan, or something on a personal level or at work. But if you've been conscious of that person and competitive for a long time, it's harder than you'd think to distinguish that from simple jealousy. So you might think you're challenging yourself and competing with your life on the line, but in reality, this could just be the result of very personal jealousy. Therefore, instead of simply behaving as yourself, you need to carefully observe yourself as an objective entity and scrutinize whether what you're doing is truly honorable, if it's right or efficient, or if it's not unsightly, and other similar considerations. The decisions you make now, the enthusiasm you feel, and the choices you make, it's best to doubt all of them. Oh, and for those whose personal significator or Time Lord is Saturn, during this time, in universal life matters like health, career, wealth, marriage, or moving, within about 6 months before or after, within about 6 months before or after. The most significant changes you can experience, like moving, getting a job, breaking up with someone and meeting someone new, these kinds of things can happen. And on the same day, Venus meets with Fomalhaut. This is a structure that's active from February 13th to the 14th. Now, when Venus and Fomalhaut meet, it's a bit like that. You know that psychology where you want to do something even more if you're told not to? So, because of that, you might cause a bit of trouble. There's usually a reason why you're told not to, but then you feel suppressed like a spring. Because of that bit of defiance or some useless curiosity, a minor mistake turns out later not to have been such a minor mistake. So it'll be like this. But on the other hand, in the realm of romance, or when you need to take action to win someone's heart, it might be a situation where you can be a bit more ambitious than you usually are. That's all for the Chronosight Weekly Horoscope for early February 2026. Thank you.